Welcome everyone to the CAPS presentations of 2019. Our seniors are so excited to have you guys here today to see their accomplishments and celebrate with them. They've been working on this for the past 4 months and really excited to show you some of their results. This block we have two great presenters. First we'll have Vannessa Yong. She'll be speaking about her experience working with the youth homeless shelter in Cambridge, Massachusetts, followed by Jessica Chen, who will be talking about her research on mental health in Asian Americans. So without further ado, Vannessa Yong.
All right, hello. Hello, my name's Vannessa, and for my Capstone internship, I volunteered at Y2Y, which stands for Youth to Youth. And so how I got here, I first heard about Capstone in bio class last year when a senior told us about it. And so he talked about how it's a good opportunity. So I went to the information session and I put in my proposal that I wanted to intern at a hospital. So originally I wanted to go to the medical field, and that's why I wanted to do a capstone related to a career. But then over the summer and into fall, I decided that I'm not sure what I really wanted to do with my future, so I decided that for CAPS instead, I wanted to do something that didn't have to relate to what I was going to do in the future and more exploring something that I didn't really know about. So that was homelessness, and which is an issue that's worldwide, that's very important, and I felt like I didn't really know much about it. So my only real interaction with volunteering and homelessness would be volunteering at Christmas in the City, which is held once a year, and you volunteer and you help out with the party, which is held for open to homeless shelters around the area, and basically it's just a Christmas party. And so even though volunteering there, it was very interesting, I didn't really learn much about it. I didn't get to learn much about homelessness or really what it was and what goes into it. So what is Y2Y? So Y2Y is in Harvard Square, and it's a youth shelter that has the capacity of 27 spaces and beds, basically. And basically what makes Y2Y special is that it is working with youth to youth, meaning all the workers are all youths themselves. They're around college age and post-college, but they're all fairly young too, and that's very important because that kind of bridges the gap between social worker and the person. And so at Y2Y, what I did was I did the dinner shifts, and basically we went in and we cooked dinner, and basically we did some housekeeping, and sometimes we would just play board games or do the activities with everyone. But that's basically what I did. And so I talked to Yosef, who's the volunteer director at Y2Y. And so something very important that I thought that he said during the interview was that there are more people experiencing homelessness than one would expect. And many of your friends or classmates might have been homeless. It's not a visible condition, and that's very important to keep in mind, because that's something I really didn't think I knew about myself. When you think about homelessness, there's kind of a stigma around it, and you think about, oh, someone in the streets are carrying a lot of bags. And it's really important to acknowledge and keep in mind that that's not exactly what it is, and that it's more than just what you visibly see. And so I also interviewed a lot of students about what they knew about homelessness. So I asked a student who goes to school at North Quincy, and so I asked him have you ever talked about homelessness in school, and what do you think, is it necessary to? And he personally said, I do not believe that we need to talk about it in school, because it's since most of us are exposed to it when we walk outside our school or go into Boston. And that kind of shows how we in Newton are not very exposed to things like this. And although I get his point of view, I feel like it's still important to talk about it anyways, because even if you physically see it, you don't really understand or know much about it. And so I also talked to some students at North, and someone said, I feel like Newton is definitely removed, and as such, I don't see many homeless people around here. And that also just further shows how closed off Newton is, and that we're not very much exposed to these kinds of issues. And another quote from a student here said, I know that in my community, as where I live, Newton, it's not that common, but in people with the same race as mine, there's a lot of poverty. And that's important to keep in mind too, that there are different factors in homelessness. And although I don't know personally much about how race goes into it, it's still important to keep in mind all these different factors that go into it. So yeah. So my overall experience. So it was mostly positive, as in I feel like I learned a lot from this, and that I feel like I even though I didn't get like exactly a lot of knowledge from it, it was still like a small exposure to it, and that's very important already. And so my only like real downside from this would be the fact that I didn't learn as much as I thought I could. But like overall, my knowledge of homelessness has expanded, but I still am not sure exactly like all about it, obviously. And I feel like from this experience, I learned that I want to further my education on that, and I also want to just learn more about it and like how to fix it, or like how to basically minimize it. So the obstacles I had during the internship was that I can't drive. So getting from Newton all the way to like Cambridge, Boston was very hard, especially during the evening when it was like traffic hour. And so that was a big problem about getting there. But another obstacle I had was that I faced some personal issues that stopped me from being able to go into the internship. And although like these are obstacles that aren't always fun to go through, like to get to, but it still taught me important lessons. Like for example, when I wasn't able to go in, it's very important to talk to people. For example, I talked a lot to Miss Garrity, and she helped me through it. She told me it's all right, everything's okay, and that we can just work by step, and that you shouldn't be like stunted by this obstacle, and that you can move past it. And it's so important to like talk to people. Like for example, I had to tell Y2Y I can't come in more often because of these personal problems. And just keeping in touch with them was very important, because I took the responsibility to come in, and you have to let them know about things. So my takeaways. So it's so important, once again, to communicate, because communicating is what gets you through obstacles and through many things like problems, and you have the responsibility and your job, and of course if something happens you can't help it, but it's still very important to communicate and keep the responsibility as a worker. And so another big takeaway I got from this was that learning new things is very important, because if we don't know about something, we won't ever be able to like make a change or like do anything, especially when it's out of your comfort zone. Like walking into this, I knew nothing really about homelessness, and all I knew was that it's a problem, but like I didn't really understand like how to do anything about it. What can I do? What should I do? And I feel like taking the first step out of it is like what leads to you being able to make a change. And so this is a little bit cliche, but like a community is so important, and it's so important to like be kind to others and like give back to each other, because at the end of the day, we're all here for each other, and it's so important to do what you can for others. And so I'm going to end the presentation with talking about ways you can contribute and help. So you can volunteer. For example, you can volunteer at the Y2Y shelter, which is in Harvard Square, and if that's a bit hard, that's okay. But you can also donate. For example, they take donations for clothing, sometimes foods depending on like what it is, and they take in like blankets or like pillows or like basically some household items. And a very important way to contribute is to learn about homelessness and like educate yourself about the situation and to advocate for it, because the more we talk about it, the more the issue is brought up to light, and the quicker we can solve the problem. Okay, thank you. Okay.